Hi, my name is Nicole Winters, and I teach visual arts here at the upper school at Rivers, and I'm also the gallery coordinator. It's my pleasure today to introduce a guest speaker, our visiting artist, Naoe Suzuki. Naoe Suzuki is the first artist to display her work on our campus through our visiting artist program. And this program offers professional artists the opportunity to display their work on our campus. These artists are selected based on their ability to speak to topics and subjects that are relevant to us as a community. And for our first show at the Revers Center for Science and Visual Arts, Naoe's work, which really reflects the intersection of arts and sciences, really felt like a perfect fit. Her exhibit titled Mapping can be seen on both floors of the Revers Center and in the Bell Gallery. And due to social distancing and our campus being closed off, it's not open to the public this year. But those of us who are on campus have really enjoyed getting to see her amazing work. And we'd really like to share it with the larger community. So a virtual gallery exhibit can be found on the Revers website. Now, please welcome Naoe, who will tell us a little bit more about her work and herself as an artist. So enjoy.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm going to start with a story about my first drawing that I remember making it in my life. I was 3 years old, living with my parents in an apartment complex called Danchi in Tokyo, Japan. And there was a small park right near our building. My mom usually took me to the small park and actually left me there alone to play with other children. Those days in Japan, even in Tokyo, that was not unusual. And then there's another park that was larger and a bit farther away. And my parents sometimes took me to this other park, usually on the weekend. One day I decided that I'm going to go to this other park on my own. So I rely on my memory and I walk to this park all by myself and then came back safely. And I was really proud of myself. I just couldn't believe I did that. So I told my parents right away, but they didn't believe me. They were like, oh no, you're too small. You're only 3 years old. There's no way that you could go all the way by yourself. So you know what I did? I drew a map. I drew a map to show them that I knew my way around. This is how I went, and this is how I came back. So this experience taught me that maps help telling stories, but not only that, I understood the power of maps. So today I'm going to show you some works from my exhibit called Mapping at the Rivers School. And while I share my screen, just bear with me so you can see my work. Okay, so now you see my work. I'm really happy to be sharing my work at the Rivers School. During the pandemic, installing work is rather difficult to do, but I really enjoyed every minute of it. And thanks to the art faculty members who helped me with the install and made it a lot of fun. So moving back to 2016. In 2016, I was invited to spend some time at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard to observe how scientists work in this biomedical research institute and make art based on my observation. The first thing I noticed was the writings and scribble sometimes, such as this one, on the whiteboards that were practically everywhere in the buildings. And of course, as a non-scientist, I didn't understand the writings at all, but I was really attracted to them. So I decided to trace them by hand, and here are some examples, a couple of layers of trace sheets of writings. And after 3 months of tracing and with enough trace materials, I decided to scan my trace writings and experiment with them digitally. I really loved how these images became dense with information and writings. It made me think of kaleidoscope or even intricate lace works. But one of the scientists at the Broad told me that it reminded him of dream catchers. So I titled them Dream Catchers. And some of these are shown as digital print in the science atrium. And this installation, titled Field Notes 2, utilizes the same images. While at the Broad, I learned that science is rigorous. Scientific knowledge, as we come to know it, is the result of countless days and months and years of experiments by scientists working in the lab. And during the pandemic, I've been thinking a lot about science. And I wanted to use the trace scientific writings to create a new installation. So I was really happy to have this opportunity to do that at the Rivers School. In science, as I observed, it's driven by the desire to understand the unknown and the courage to go in search of things that might not be knowable. As an artist, this was where I felt closely in sync with scientists about the way we do our work. And sometimes we don't know what we're doing or even what we're after, but we keep experimenting and exploring. We keep showing up in the lab. We keep showing up in the studio. And with layers of scientific ideas and writings lay on the floor, this installation calls attention to what makes the groundwork for future scientific discoveries. And some of them may never see the light of the day, but they make up the whole groundwork. That's the foundation. This installation is made of archival pigment print on Tyvek and vellum papers. And you'll notice the similar images being used in the video piece that's also in the Bell Gallery, by the way. And this video combines these images with bits of conversations among scientists at the Broad Institute. And unfortunately, I don't have time to show you the video in this presentation, but I hope you spend some time watching it in the Bell Gallery. And it's also available on YouTube. The video is composed as a day in the life of a scientist. A sentence like this one, "I'm really tired of this," reveals the frustrations for failures and glitches in the system, but it also shows scientists' genuine enthusiasm, joy, and determination. This work is a selection from a series called Sequencing Stories. The work is based on a scientific paper titled Initial Sequencing and Analysis of the Human Genome that was published in 2001 when the Human Genome Project was near completion. The Human Genome Project was the international scientific effort that successfully deciphered the entire human genome, and it changed the way we study biology and medicine forever. And it was actually 30 years ago this month, October 1st, in 1990, the Human Genome Project began, and it took 13 years to complete. I also started looking into history of medicine while I was at the Broad, and I became fascinated with ancient medical papyrus from 1600 BC in Egypt. And this papyrus, called the Edwin Smith Papyrus, included prognosis for the first time in recorded history. And in it, it described a cancer tumor. And I was surprised to learn that ancient people knew about a cancer tumor. And also while reading about early history of medicine, I learned that many viruses are quite old, like ancient old. For example, Ebola virus has been around somewhere from 16 to 23 million years. So humans have always lived with diseases and have been fighting for treatment and cure for all this time. And what was most intriguing to me about the ancient medical papyrus was the magic spells that were recorded as a part of legitimate medical treatment. I was also fascinated that papyrus survived for all these years, almost 4,000 years. In this work, the ancient papyrus is represented by a pair of irregular square shapes or square-ish shapes in rustic golden colors, which are based on the shape of a sheet from the Edwin Smith papyrus. And they sort of hover over the text like a ghost. Many lines, straight lines, are then drawn over the papers with dots connecting them together and creating geometric shapes. Weaving together sources from two different historical points, connecting lines, dots, and seeing shapes being emerged within the image. I wanted to bring these two important scientific records together and make it into a new meaning. And this is still an ongoing project for me. And I use metallic gel pens and white gel pen to make drawings on top of the archival pigment print on paper. And here's some detail. Since the pandemic started, I've been thinking about these questions. When there are no treatments available, what do we do? Where do we go? And how do we deal with the disease, both physically and mentally? We've been living with these questions for several months now. This installation is called accrescence, which means continual growth. The magic spells from the Edwin Smith papyrus were deployed to create new meanings in this work. The pandemic made me look at the magic spells in a different way. And in this iteration, magic spells, and that's laser cut on vellum paper, that are presented by layering old and found papers that have histories and meanings for me. Adding layers of histories to these magic spells, our desire to want to believe in treatment is never lost then or now. Whether magic spells for ancient people or prayers and hope for vaccines during the pandemic in the 21st century. And to me, these pieces speak quietly as a prayer. In my latest project, entitled Extension Studies, is a meditation on a place that is dear to my heart. While researching the maps of the Adirondacks in northern New York State, I noticed that there were many names of animals, such as Eagle Lake, Little Otter Pond, Buck Mountain, Beaver Brook, Salmon River, and so forth. Intrigued by all these places named after animals, I began tracing animals' names, but concealing much of the rest. These ink drawings were based on historical maps. This one is based on the 1888 map of Adirondacks. It's 86 inches by 70 inches. I had to enlarge the map to this scale so that I could see the tiny names on the map, but I still had to use a magnifier to see them. And of course, I was working with a magnifier. And here's the detail. So I first traced the map and went over the lines with pencil, then filled in with ink. The drawing is made with India ink, walnut ink, and dye-based ink on paper. The white speckles you see are the names of animals, and now you see them. These names were carefully painted around the text with ink, leaving the text as untouched. This drawing was based on the 1869 map of New York wilderness, before this area became known as Adirondacks. It's also made with India ink, walnut ink, and dye-based ink on paper. The contrast between what the area was representing, which was wilderness, and the intricate border and the fancy lettering was really interesting to me. It felt like taming of the wild by humans, the European settlers in this case. And these names of animals, they float in the sea of blackness. They had marked on the land. But in this work, they might become stars in the sky, forming constellation. And this is a work that was done directly on the found map. The map was well used and torn badly when I found it on the ground. Actually, I had to repair it on the back of the map. This was a map of Racket Lake in Adirondacks. The close-up will reveal the selected text from the map. I used mineral pigment and color pencils on this map. Mapping is one way we come to understand the world by organizing and systemizing layers of information. And maps are the tools for wayfinding, charting, exploring, and documenting. But to an artist, maps are starting points for new interpretations, experiments, inventions, and actions. The collecting and organizing of layers of information in science and the weaving of histories, perhaps my attempt to understand the unknown as well as the time we are in. And to do that, we need to create our own maps. Thank you very much for having me today, and please stay safe and healthy. Thank you.